Welcome to another episode of the Guided Hearts podcast, where we dive into real conversations that heal, inspire, and empower. I am your host, Nunu, and today we're talking about something deeply personal and transformative, that is vulnerability. We'll explore how sharing your pain can be a gateway to healing, connection, and growth. So, grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let's get real together. Let's start with a question. What comes to mind when you hear the word vulnerability? For many of us, it might feel like weakness, like exposing yourself to criticism or judgment. But here's the thing, vulnerability is actually a strength. It's the courage to say, "This is me," scars and all. When we are vulnerable, we allow others to see our true selves. And guess what? That's where authentic connections are formed. The late Dr. Brené Brown, a researcher and storyteller, said it best. Vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. Imagine living without those things. How empty that would be. Vulnerability is how we truly live and thrive. Now, I want to get personal with you. Vulnerability is not just a topic for me. It's a journey that I've had to walk. There was a season in my life where I felt overwhelmed by pain, by betrayal, and by so many other things. I thought, who would understand? Who would care if I shared this? But when I finally opened up to somebody I trusted, my best friend, I felt this weight lift off my shoulders. You see, when we keep our pain bottled up, it eats at us from the inside. But when we share it, we take away its power to isolate us. Vulnerability has a power that isolates us. As human beings, or as people, children of God rather, we have to be vulnerable. Jesus at some point was vulnerable. Do you remember when the Bible spoke about how Jesus took the disciples for prayer? And then he took 3 of the disciples for prayer. Not all of them, but 3 of them. There was that crew that Jesus was able to be vulnerable with. And there was another time where Jesus was crying in the Garden of Gethsemane. He cried in front of his disciples. He cried to his Father in heaven. He was not only vulnerable with us, he was vulnerable with people, and he was vulnerable with God. He was able to say to his Father, "This is too heavy for me. This is too hard for me, but your will above my own will, God." He didn't just take up the cross. He didn't just walk to the cross. No. He told him that it's hard. But God, your will over my own will. So when we keep our pain bottled up, it eats at us from the inside. But when we share it, we take away its power to isolate us from people who love us. Vulnerability says, "I'm not alone in this." And sometimes hearing those words from somebody else is the greatest comfort we can receive. Have you ever experienced this? If you're listening and nodding along, know you're not alone. In fact, let's pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. Breathe in and release. Feel that? That's the space where healing begins. Let's unpack why sharing your pain is so powerful. And these are the 3 key reasons. Number 1, it breaks the power of shame. Shame thrives in silence. Okay? But when you share your story, shame begins to lose its grip. It's like shining a light in a dark room. Suddenly, the shadows disappear. Number 2, it fosters connection. When you're vulnerable, you give others permission to be vulnerable too. This creates a space for authentic relationships, And honestly, isn't that what we all long for? Imagine if you were in a relationship with somebody who was never open with you, who would always hide their pain, who would always hide their problems. How authentic would that relationship be? You would know that no, me and this person end there. We don't go further than this. But an open and honest conversation in a relationship will build authenticity. Okay? Number 3, it helps you process and heal. Speaking your pain aloud can be incredibly therapeutic. Sometimes just putting words to what you're feeling can bring clarity and release. Journaling, talking to a friend, or even speaking to a counselor, these are all ways to let it out and start moving forward. Listen to me and listen very carefully. I'm going to hold your hand while I say this. Healing isn't linear and it's not immediate. But sharing your pain is the first step. I know vulnerability can feel scary. So here are a few tips to make it a little easier. Number 1, start small. You don't have to share your deepest pain right away. Start with something manageable and share with somebody you can trust. Number 2, choose the right person. Not everyone deserves to hear your story. Share with someone who has earned your trust and has shown they can handle it with care. Number 3, be patient with yourself. Opening up takes courage, and it's okay to feel nervous. Take your time. Remember, there's no rush in the journey of healing. Before we wrap it up, I want to leave you with this thought. I'm going to hold your hand again, okay? Your story matters. There's someone out there who needs to hear it. This is me looking into your eyes now. Someone who will find healing in knowing they are not alone because of your courage, in knowing they are not the only ones who faced that, because there is nothing new under the sun. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can reach out to me on social media or send me a message. And if you feel inspired, share this episode with someone who might need encouragement today. Remember, vulnerability is not weakness, it's strength. It's how we heal. And healing is a journey we don't have to take alone. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Vulnerability on the Guided Hearts podcast. I hope you're leaving with a little more courage to embrace your vulnerability and share your story. Until next time, stay authentic, stay brave, and keep healing. Take care.